aspects of a business through the breakdown of company goals into smaller steps for success. In my work as a leadership advisor, I've actually expanded on the Kaizen philosophy to get at the core of what makes a leader in this 21st century successful. For me, Kaizen starts with humanizing the workplace, re-energizing individual employees, and injecting the entire work culture with renewed vigor and forward momentum. So when you break the word into two parts, I find that we discover a deeper meaning that gets to the heart of what I hope to offer. Please switch. Kai, a restorative and innovative change, Zen, for the peaceful well-being of all. This means that we as leaders make mindful choices that establish these principles when we hire for our management positions. In general, this post-industrial age has tended to focus on efficiency, productivity, and speed, all great things. Don't get me wrong, but somehow this is not quite enough to sustain the life of a leader or the energy of their people. Please switch. In an effort to lean practices, organizations have often unwittingly put primary value on employee output, where people are left feeling like a machine, whose only value comes from the amount and speed at which they can produce. Sadly, and to our own detriment, we've lost focus on the humans doing the actual work. It is time to refocus on what drives and motivates people. Doing so will inspire employees from within, allowing them the opportunity to use their strengths and giving them a sense of purpose and fulfillment. Please switch. This not only results in a more engaged workplace, it is a strong influencer of overall organizational growth. People who feel valued are more engaged at work and in life. They're better able to be a positive influence at work and better equipped to influence the world around them. This applies to all peoples around the whole globe, and I believe could be one of the keys to addressing the chaos of our current events. Finding out why people enjoy certain jobs in their life and the details as to what made it one of their favorite places to work is part of the accumulated countless real-time conversations that I have recorded to learn more about what energizes people and engages employees at work. Switch, please. Thank you. The answers are revealing and important to understand if you also want to attract good people who enjoy working with others of similar intelligence, who thrive in these technological environments. So amidst these answers, a few key relational themes seem to rise to the top all the time. Even if you stopped right now, I would love it if all of you just stopped right now and asked yourself this question before I continue. What was your favorite job and why? It could have been an internship or something similar to this. But would it include a boss that took the time to mentor you? Or maybe it was when you had some relational aspect with a coworker in whom they had your back, someone you could trust. Maybe instead it was a whole team effort where respect and community were allowed to grow amongst each other, where your ideas were listened to and incorporated into an action plan for the company. My guess is that if you think back, your answers probably will have some combination of these ingredients. It is exactly these types of themes that consistently repeat themselves when various people would answer this question. So what was your favorite job and why? Even to the point of not minding if you worked extra hours at this favorite job. This is so key to answering the question for why humans do what we do. This is huge. Please switch the slide. Thank you. This has also been confirmed by Gallup researchers Rath and Harder in 2010, who studied increasing well-being in organizations, the role of managers and leaders. They found that employees who experienced caring managers were more likely to be top performers and produce higher quality work. They were also less likely to be sick, less likely to change jobs, and less likely to get injured on the job. That sounds pretty clear as to how to prevent employee fatigue and keep them engaged with sustainable innovation, besides adding personal fulfillment with human connection. But how do we implement this type of relational activity on a daily basis? This is what the 21st century leadership paradigm shift needs to focus on in order to understand the current global demands and be successful in the future. In our business life, we try to prove that we can make it without others, and we delude ourselves into thinking that caring too much for other people might take the edge off our leadership or bite out of our productivity. Please switch. Yet, history has a way of teaching us what works in life and what doesn't. So let's go back, way back, to Plutarch, the Greek historian who is quoted by saying, "We do not sit at the table to eat, but to eat together." Okay. Might not seem like much of a statement at first, but understand the context in which Plutarch spoke this. For his culture in ancient Greece had brilliant philosophers whom we still look to today, many innovators who demonstrated wise ways of fostering a society that cohabited for over 1,000 years with a profound concept that is so simple. They had to have at least one meal a day that was communal, with all levels of occupation and status. Sharing ideas from other perspectives across the table was part of the joy and companionship of this daily practice. One of the real-life stories currently told to me by a man who now runs his own law practice reiterated this profound Greek philosophy, and he told me it was his favorite job, where he didn't even mind working extra hours when he was a young attorney, hired on as an associate in a Denver, Colorado law firm. He remembered that every Friday at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, his boss would gather all the staff in the office and to go into the lounge area, and everyone would grab a drink from the refrigerator and talk real life with each other. It wasn't a meeting or a roundup of the week's work. Instead, they talked about life outside the office. It didn't matter if they were high on the seniority list or low on the ladder like him at the time. They all gathered and talked face to face. I remember his eyes lit up so much when recalling this time of his life and telling me with such enthusiasm, "I love that time together." He also shared that the head boss would have lunch with everyone a couple times a year and not use it to quote-unquote teach a lesson, but to listen and learn about the person he was with, to hear their ups and downs in life. Please switch. This is a small glimpse of what relational connection might look like in a smaller business setting. But even in a larger company, you can apply the Kaizen philosophy and break it down into small steps of success. Supervisors can do this with the line personnel. Managers can do it with supervisors. Regional managers can do it with managers. Vice presidents do it with regional, etc., etc., etc. There are many ways to pass this legacy of life as a leader to those under our supervision, to give them a sense of value that their life matters. Even if you are a one-person show, it is vital for you to also make time for that face-to-face interaction that inspires you, possibly to hire an advisor to talk on a regular basis that you stay engaged and are motivated to follow up with your action plans. While there are other types of mentoring methods being implemented in proactive employee engaging companies, or personality type tests even match up co-mentoring. I love how Tamara last week did a great webinar on the whole multi-generational, but understanding the co-mentoring aspect, which allows there to be the cohabitation within the workplace. This is definitely a start in the right direction of building a work culture of relational connection, but certainly, this does not excuse leadership from actively participating in mentoring relationships. We must understand the energizing influence we potentially have in this position when acted upon. Good leadership, to me, equals good mentorship and includes these attributes. Are we listening to these people without the distraction of head chatter? Are we valuing the person separate from their performance? Do we see them in their whole being, their whole, other than just what we need from them? Are we encouraging them to personally grow and getting excited about that when we see it? Do we let them know we believe in their potential? Do we acknowledge that in our divine light and dark that dwells in each of us, it also is in them? We don't think of ourselves as more high and noble. We respect their humanity. And most importantly, we are leading by example. I have kind of a fun story to read as a great example of leading by example. So, a devout aged woman once asked the Holy Prophet Muhammad to speak to her son, who spent all his wages on dates, leaving her penniless. The Prophet promised to do so after a 5 weeks interval. On the appointed day, the boy was brought before the Prophet, who spoke to him very kindly, saying, "You are such a sensible young man that you ought to remember that your mother has endured much suffering for your sake, sacrificing all that she had and earned in order to bring you up. Yet now that she is so old and you are in a position to support her, you squander your money on dates. Is this just or right? I hope by the grace and mercy of Allah you will give up this habit." The boy listened very attentively and profited by what he heard. Afterwards, the Prophet's disciples wondered among themselves and finally asked the Prophet himself why the reproof had been delayed for 35 days. The Holy Prophet replied in explanation, "I am myself fond of dates, and I knew I had no right to advise the lad to abstain from them until I had myself refrained from eating them for 5 weeks." So there you go. A fun illustration of leading by example, but so true. Please switch. Some of you are saying, all this relational stuff really is not my thing. I'd rather not. Okay, well, let's just look at the flip side. Let's remind ourselves of the life-changing impact one can have on another. Try to remember a time in your life when it felt terrible to get up and go to work and go to your job. Just didn't want to go do it. Your contributions were possibly shot down in favor of keeping the quote-unquote status quo. Maybe even you just didn't feel listened to or respected, and definitely felt a lack of purpose for your life. Not a good feeling to remember these situations, but it is so important for us to take time to think upon this when we are trying to persuade ourselves to change our ways as leaders in order to facilitate people's differences and strengths, rather than demanding their allegiance to our agendas and to results-only thinking. This ultimately is a person in a position of leadership that's just creating a type of work prison. Please switch. I appreciate the honesty, definitely, to admit if you simply say, "I really don't care about these people." By the way, that's a whole other series I do on mindful leadership that nurtures your soul. Let me just put it this way. If you don't know how to nurture yourself, you certainly won't know how to be able to care or have compassion for other people. Leaders who are mindful tend to be more effective in understanding and relating to others and in motivating them towards shared goals. Hence, they become more effective in leadership roles. This kind of compassionate leadership style is actually being embraced in New Zealand currently by what's called a compassionate work index model. But I get it. We all have moments where we need space and time to be alone and refuel. Yet, if we begin to find ourselves getting annoyed more easily by people, we might not be aware of how subtly we have allowed the power we feel in this position to get a foothold in our lives. Please switch. Here are some common attributes that will awaken us to reevaluate our ways if we are heading towards the dangerous deep end of power. Let's ask ourselves right now. Do we have an inflated sense of self-worth? Probably hard to admit that, but it's really important that we're honest with ourselves. Do we have an acute self-interest? Are we talking about ourselves most of the time? If somebody brings up something, do we tend to kind of turn the conversation to something about ourselves always? Do we use deception to control outcomes? Maybe we use coercion. Or, this is a really good one to find out, test ourselves. Are we overreacting on a regular basis to things? Or we're not showing that kind of control without having to always overreact to what our employees are doing? Do we intrude over personal boundaries at the office? Do we change goals frequently according to our needs? Do we listen begrudgingly to others' ideas? Once again, we could branch out into a whole other series just on how positions of power and leadership can have an effect on their ego and even destroy good people. But let me just say that it takes courage, humility, and a choice on our part to respect that the position of leadership is not about our status, but what would benefit the whole. Please switch. Thank you. Getting back to maintaining sustainable innovation where it takes an understanding that current employees, especially the younger generations, want their lives to mean something more than the hollowness of past company protocol. A key aspect of the current global workforce is that we have a wonderful new outlook with the Generation X and millennial generations who want to include their relational social connections in their life and don't want to follow in the workaholic footsteps of the baby boomers. They also want to be vested in by the company with personal and professional development opportunities that refuel their energy. This is exciting. This is fantastic to have this kind of energy. But it requires leadership to make strategic funding decisions for these types of opportunities to be available and keep it a priority if they're going to maintain 21st century employees engaged with thriving, sustainable innovation. Please switch. Bersin highlights this in his Forbes.com article that I mentioned earlier. Quote, best places to work companies don't just have ping pong tables and free lunch. They have a soul, which makes work exciting and energizing, unquote. This to me means that the leader needs the soul. The leader needs to invest in great management and leadership. They need to train and understand and develop people so that they can grow. And they define their business in a way that brings meaning and purpose to the organization. So, great leaders are those who help facilitate others to grow with a sense of dedication and trust and the confidence to overcome the obstacles presented, to taste a fulfillment that goes beyond individual or functional tactics and techniques, where the ultimate achievement is a culture of community in and of itself. Please switch. So in his book, Grow to Greatness, Smart Growth for Entrepreneurial Businesses, Edward Hess notes, quote, culture is the glue that binds people together and to the business, unquote. This is true when the culture is good, but obviously, if your company culture is damaged by lack of trust, or if the employees perceive that they are being used rather than relied upon, your culture could drive good people away. Learning to embrace and foster this all-important culture of community within our organizations is the key to creating an engaged and motivated workforce, filled with employees who not only find personal fulfillment on the job, but also work toward the betterment of the whole. Please switch. Thank you. So next, before we walk through specific action steps of how to cultivate this culture of community in which employees are engaged and motivated to succeed, we need to take a hard look at ourselves and to search within. So I've identified 3 questions to ask ourselves in order to determine whether we're ready to start this and go down the road toward becoming a healthier leader to promote a culture of trust. So, the first question, please switch. Do we believe in the bigger picture? Because it isn't something that produces bottom line success overnight and takes time for ourselves and our employees to trust one another, especially if our past style was focused more on profits than people, we must make a decision to keep our focus on the bigger picture and not look back. Without our belief that this process will take effort and resolve to stay the course, we are almost guaranteed to buckle under the first crisis situation that arises. So let's look at Southwest Airlines as an example for us to learn from. One of the many heroic acts immediately following the tragic event of 9/11 was how Southwest Airlines took care of their people by avoiding layoffs. The company was losing millions each day, but CEO Jim Parker made his priority crystal clear when he said, clearly, "We can't continue to do this indefinitely, but we are willing to suffer some damage, even to our stock price, to protect the jobs of our people." This is a CEO who put his own needs, the maintaining of his stock prices and sustaining profits, behind those of his employees, who were likely terrified about what might happen on their next flight. He took care of his people, and in turn, his people took care of him through dedication, hard work, and trust. This kind of attitude and behavior not only will build organizational resilience, it will sustain a company's energy. When your people truly believe that you are more interested in fostering relationships with them than you are in raking in profits, they will extend you miles and miles of grace, offer unfettered loyalty, and help you build the successful organization of your dreams, where profits will soar. Next slide, please. Question number 2. We need to ask ourselves, are we in it for the right reasons? So, businesses love to craft this mission statement and vision paragraph that tout about a caring company with employees who feel like family. But the reality is, most of these statements are just there to look good on paper and really aren't implemented. So, we really need to ask ourselves if we are in it to look out for number 1. Do we give undeserved preferential treatment to a few favorites of ours? Do we hoard the business spoils rather than responding in gratitude to those who have supported us? Or are we overreacting and we fire people without giving them a chance to be taught a different way? This kind of hypocritical behavior can result in a type of negative energy that will sap the life out of us as leaders and out of our company's culture. I enjoy how successful owner of Room and Board, John Gabbert, understands that having engaged employees is what sets his company apart, and it has been very successful. He is quoted as saying, "I never wanted to be the biggest. I never thought about size. I just wanted to be the best and to spend my time at work with good people doing something more meaningful than just making money or keeping score." Sounds like he knows what he's talking about. So let's ask that again. Are we really in this for the right reasons? The third question to ask ourselves in order to determine whether we're ready to start down the road toward becoming a healthier leader to promote a culture of trust is this. Please switch. Can we step up, and then let go? Keeping employees engaged and sustaining innovation means being a leader who is willing to loosen the rein of control and listen to feedback with suggestions from employees, even when what they say goes against our grain. It's important to be open and be able to hear this, another perspective. This is so important for the health of any organization. So in his February 23, 2014 New York Times column, How to Get a Job at Google, Thomas L. Friedman interviewed Google's Senior Vice President of People Operations, Laszlo Bock, Bach discussed emergent leadership versus the traditional form of leadership. And quote, here's what he said about it. What we care about is when faced with a problem and you're a member of a team, do you at the appropriate time step in and lead? And just as critically, do you step back and stop leading? Do you let somebody else lead? But what's critical to be an effective leader in this environment is you have to be willing to relinquish power, unquote. I would say that Google has implemented 21st century healthy leadership with this kind of mindset. Please switch. A business professor at the University of Michigan in the United States, Jane Dutton, and her assistant Laura Atlantis did a marvelous job of researching the key elements that make a culture of community, or as they termed it, high-quality connections for organizations. This research is very pertinent for our 21st century multi-generational, multicultural workplace. They came up with 4 components that promote high connection values. 1, valuing teamwork. So that when you're in a situation where everybody feels that they are participating and giving ideas, you have all the members feeling that they are very much, it's important that they come through and follow through. You're going to find out that this younger generation will rise to the occasion with knowing that they are part of a team. They're not going to let down their co-workers. It's very important to them. Number 2, valuing the development of people. We've already talked about that. It's so important for people to know that their personal growth and who they are being vested in, and that they're being challenged to grow as a person and their skills. Please switch. Number 3, valuing the whole person. This is so important. All 4 of these, please hear all these. That we're not just looking at them for what we can get out of them, but we see them as a whole person. And 4, valuing respect and the dignity of others. So when a group of people can trust and respect one another's abilities to overcome the obstacles, and hear this clearly, if they know that when they leave their seat to sacrifice themselves to get the task accomplished, that their seat isn't taken. Please switch. That they know when they leave their seat to sacrifice themselves to get the task accomplished, that their seat isn't taken. In fact, they are warmly received by the group who has filled in the gap to keep it clean and tidy for them to come back to. It's when we ask each other, what can I do to help you? Not, how can I take advantage of you when you are vulnerable or gone? Please switch. In his book, Good to Great, Why Some Companies Make the Leap and Others Don't, Jim Collins discovered great companies were distinguished by collegial relationships that often would last a lifetime. Quote, the people we interviewed from the good to great companies clearly loved what they did largely because they loved who they did it with, unquote. Please switch. So my final charge to us as leaders is this: to start thinking universally rather than remotely. When we get caught in a cycle of myopic thinking where the world revolves around our own survival, we are certainly going to spin out of control. Being keenly aware of the consequences, positive and negative, that is our attitudes. It is our attitudes as leaders and our actions and our choices that can energize those we lead if we are able to open our eyes to another way of doing life that centers on kind communication, respect, humility, and appreciation. The possibilities for our companies are limitless. It is time for us to embrace this 21st century of leadership that mentors and builds trusting, influential relationships. It is vital for us as leaders to become aware of the mindful choices on a daily basis that will help us to develop strategic ways to maintain not only our own energy, but understand this will also reinforce this new paradigm of 21st century leadership that facilitates the engagement of employees and sustains innovation for the well-being of all. This is true Kaizen, and I believe will breathe life back into the organizational work culture of the world and help to heal the global soul of humanity. Thank you very much. I really look forward to hearing your thoughts. And this is one of also my favorite parts, is hearing your questions. Thank you. And you can then go to the last slide. Thank you, Ms. Nita.
Thank you, Ms. Singer, for a lovely presentation. It was very interesting, and I hope the audience found it quite interesting for them as well. So let us begin with the question and answer session. Please be informed, attendees, that we are open for question and answer. If you have any question, please put it in the chat box or raise your hand icon available on the webinar. So we have Mr. Rauf Nazar, who has his hand raised. Let me check if he's there. Hello, Mr. Rauf, are you there? I don't think so. He's active right now. So let me go to the next question that we have from our attendees. Is feedback a great motivator to keep employees engaged?
So feedback being there being a way to hear what the employees, what I call that is a Kaizen blitz, where I have a meeting with people that are able, we throw out ideas onto the board and being able to put up their various things. I also let them know ahead of time that all ideas will be looked at, and possibly if you don't see them implemented right away, that it could be in the future. But yes, when employees start to know that their ideas are actually being heard, what kind of trust that you're building with them, that they matter, and that what they're thinking and what they're experiencing is contributing to the whole of the organization. So that's how I believe when they share feedback. And sometimes, as I said, it might go across your, it might feel like it's completely opposite to how you would handle something, but it is so important that we are continually thinking as leaders that we don't know it all. We've got to learn from those around us and what they're experiencing, and take that into consideration. And so yes, I do believe that once they know, that they see that there is even a small part of it is being implemented, is going to have them feel that they are part of the whole, which makes them feel connected, which then also frees them up to start thinking of more innovative thoughts. Good question. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Singer. We have another one, and the question is, how to humanize the workplace that you had mentioned in the Kaizen approach? What drives and motivates people? How to find this out?
So, okay, so as far as the things that have been found usually are very relational, connected, is what we found in different capacities of studies and also different things. So I think you're trying to ask about what actually, where the rubber meets the road when you're in the workplace, of how are you going to find out what makes that happen. That probably is not going to be something that you're going to be, unless you're, it all depends on how large of an organization we're talking from. So I guess that would vary up my answer considerably, trying to understand what capacity of an organization that you're in, whether it's a large one or a smaller one, to give you more tangible ways of going about it. So these personality tests that are coming out are definitely part of what can help understand what's going to help them. But if you, as a leader, I guess is what I'm trying to encourage, if you start to allow yourself to be more relational and show interest in the people and help those supervisors, managers underneath your leadership to show them how to do that and participate, and then they will then in turn be able to do that for those underneath them. That's how I'm seeing this implemented. It's not so much, I think while you're in the process of that, you will get feedback throughout that time of asking whether or not they feel that this is effective. The employees can give feedback, but I do believe you're going to get a wonderful positive response if you start breaking this into more of your daily practice as a leader. That's the key right now, is what can we do as leaders to start doing and implementing in our own lives and making sure that we are growing in relational aspect of respect for other people and how we're doing it with those underneath us, and in turn teaching them how to do it with people underneath them. If that makes sense. I hope I answered that question.
Thank you, Ms. Singer. I hope that answered the question for Ms. Saima. We have another question, and it is, I have a small business, online business, but it's difficult to retain employees for a longer time considering the limitations of employee growth. What will you suggest is the best way to retain and engage the employees?
Okay, so you have a small business. I like that. That makes it a much more obtainable thing. At this point in time, I would, if it in the very first part, you need to have feedback, probably asking some of these people why they're leaving. I think would be important to hear, even though you might not like it, what you're hearing at first. But it's important to ask them, possibly, to take a time, brief, at the very end if they're leaving, go, why is it that you're leaving? Just need to please be honest with me. And that will help give feedback to understanding what possibly are some holes that are going on in your workplace. Actually spending some time, I don't know when you say small business, how many employees you actually have, if you have several managers, or if you just have one manager, but that's where talking to those people and then actually allowing yourself to spend some time. If there are a couple managers that you're dealing with, I would spend some time taking time out throughout a week where you're actually sitting in and seeing how they are responding to this manager, how the manager is communicating to the people, if it's with respect or if it's in a degrading way. I would definitely take that time and then once again start implementing and asking yourself, because so many times we don't realize as leaders that we are actually participating in non-relational, non-verbal actions. And so it really is important to start evaluating yourself and asking, am I coming across as very cold? Am I not communicating well? Am I not giving clear instructions? Am I not presenting a vision that's clear for these people? Is there a lack in how I go about interacting with people? Do I let them know? Do I ask them how their day's going? Is there anything that I can, tools that I can get for you to make your work easier? Is there a wall that you've got to take time to ask them these questions of what their life is experiencing in the workplace and what struggles they're going through, to help them, give them tools to know how to move beyond it so that they can feel more confident that they are capable and can move forward and want to stay there, because you are actually taking the time to help give them tools to move through the obstacles that they're encountering at that time. So really ask yourself those questions and start to make sure that you're taking the time, and you've got to put it in your schedule. It's not going to happen. It's just not going to appear, this magical piece of time. You've got to think ahead of time and go, okay, this is the period I'm going to spend here, and be able to listen to their concerns and needs. So those would be my first initial suggestions to help understand if and help employees stay engaged, because if they know that you're really listening to their answers when you ask them these questions, they're going to start to think otherwise before they leave.
Thank you, Ms. Singer. I hope that answers the question from Mr. Rahman. We have another one from Mr. Abdul Hadi, and the question is, how can you create a culture of communication as the workplace that I belong to have people coming from different regions and castes? So, how can you avoid the communication gap amongst them?
So I'm curious, my first thoughts are going, okay, is this meaning that they're based in different regions so that they are only communicating over the internet? Are they actually in an office? So I have a couple questions to really be able to answer that question well. I would suggest...
He's written they are in one office but from different, coming in from different cultures and regions.
Okay. Okay. That's where communication, definitely taking time to have a meeting specifically about communication, how people are more comfortable with communicating, possibly depending on the capabilities. You might even bring in a professional who understands multicultural communication, if that's not your strength as a business owner, to do a half-day seminar or something to help facilitate understanding how to communicate, and also to ask questions in a way to bring out truly people's answers of how they're going to do best with communicating. So giving it just even a piece of time where you are meeting all together to talk about communication, I think would be the first step in having feedback. And then always, you can have as many meetings as you want with this stuff, but if you don't have a follow-up action plan that you are sticking with, that stays consistent, and then you come back to it 6 months later and you go, how has this worked? Maybe we can make some improvements. Let's do another meeting 6 months later to see if we were able to implement the things that came out of it. What came up, what flaws, what obstacles came out of this one. And then you re-implement something else. And so it's very important that you stay consistent with whatever it is that you do come up with in these meetings, that you don't let that go and you fall back into your old ways. Because that ultimately is everywhere in the world. We have these great ideas, but whether or not we actually follow through with them and stay consistent with it, and then possibly have some fun with it. They might have some great ideas of going, every month we're going to allow there to be, maybe once a month, there's going to be a fun where somebody from a different culture can make the lunch for the day, bring it in with different understanding kind of the culture and the fun holidays that they do, the foods that they have, to allow there to be a real time kind of appreciation for the different cultures, and then the next month a different culture, just making it enjoyable and having that, and yet promoting that face-to-face interaction and seeing that life can be different and really enjoyable in a different culture, and that you're able to appreciate it and laugh and enjoy those times. So those would be a couple ideas I would throw out there. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Ms. Ingu. We have one last question before we come to an end, and the question is, what are the ways that you can emphasize to maintain work-life balance amongst the employees?
Could you repeat that one more time, please?
I think so. She's trying to ask, what are the ways that you would suggest to maintain a work-life balance for the employees?
Okay, so I'm trying to...
Work-life balance.
Right, I'm trying to see this if this is coming from the leadership, as a leadership position, how can you maintain work-life balance, or from an employee perspective?
As I can see, what the question is, I can feel that she's trying to ask that from a point of view, how can a leader help his,
Okay.
his employees to maintain that balance, work-life balance?
Okay. Awesome. Thank you for that clarification. So, for a leader, first of all, once again, leading by example. That's the first thing I'm going to do, because that's the place, which is where I love to talk with those who are in the position of leadership. How are they doing with maintaining their own work-life balance? Being able to take the time to re-energize, reintroducing the things that get you excited about life, to get you out of bed, is probably the strategy. It sounds like, well, wait a minute, that's not talking about the employees and how I can pass that down. I can't emphasize this more. We as leaders need to implement it first in our lives before it's going to follow down to those around us. It's just the way it works. And so we've got to ask ourselves, how are we doing this? How are we creating balance in our life? And obviously, you can't always have that. And so there's a time and place, for the most part, that there hopefully will be balance. But understand there will be moments when you'll have to go very hard. And that's part of real life too. But I believe that if you're majority, that you're trying to help create that work balance environment for your employees, that when those times come, that you just have to grind, and you got to go hard, and it's got to be long hours to pull something through. They're going to do that because they know that's not your norm, and they're going to really pull through for you. So please take time to ask yourself, what have I forgotten in my life? What have I been pushing out of my life as a leader, thinking that I have to go all the time for all these demands? What have I pushed out of my life that I no longer have in, that I enjoyed so much that I wish that I could have back in my life again? I want you to answer that first. I want you to try to get that into your life, at least at the beginning, once a month for you to look forward to. And then break it into once every 2 weeks that you're possibly able to do it. And then possibly, maybe even able to do it once a week. I don't know. It depends on what the area is, but something that gives you excitement again back in your life will then allow you to enjoy and to come in with an attitude and lead by example. And then obviously you're going to be able to see a lot more clearly. You're going to have a lot more insight and understanding when you're working with your managers or your employees, of seeing that they're not allowing themselves to do this, helping them understand how to turn it off, maybe possibly having somebody come in who can speak into this and actually do, once again, like a half day or a 2-hour seminar where they can have a time of helping them contemplate and decide and make decisions about what things they can take out of their lives that are causing distractions, what things they can simplify in their life to help them have more time. I mean, that's part of your role as a leader, to try to find ways to help them have time to sort through that. If you see that work is becoming their life and they're not able to distinguish the two, and they're losing their passion and zeal, and things are just becoming overwhelming. That's where breaking it down into smaller steps and saying, how can we make this more manageable and more obtainable so that you stay confident in your skill sets and you're growing also in that. So, and that will allow the employee then to take time and go, okay, I need to learn how to shut this off. And that takes some techniques to help be able to shut off work. Is not an easy thing when you are going hard at something and they're good and they're intelligent. And so having them make themselves have breaks is part of bringing in possibly a a speaker to help them take the time to start sorting through that. And once again, you can have those great meetings, but if there's no follow-up action, if there's no ability 6 months later to go, okay, we're going to take some more time out again to see how we're doing with this. How's everybody doing with implementing what we learned last time? Whatever you decided you wanted to do and to start putting into your life, how are you actually implementing this this time? And to let it be a continual process of engagement and improvement. So I hope that answers somewhat. Obviously, I could go even farther in depth and participate, and actually I can see how I love the question. I love that you're thinking about it and that you're actually wanting to help your employees with it and yourself. So you're definitely in the right direction. I appreciate the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Singer. Participants, if you have any more questions, you can reach Ms. Singer directly on the mentioned email address on the screen. And this really brings us towards the end of the webinar. Ms. Singer, any concluding remarks from your side before we dismiss the session?
No, I just really appreciate this, Ms. Nita, this opportunity. I look forward to questions in the future and hopefully connections. And all the best to all of you. Keep it up. Just the idea that you are on this webinar means that you're thinking about it, and so much appreciate all that you've done so far for your people, and want to encourage you that you can make a huge difference in their lives by leaving a legacy of life. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Singh, once again. I really want to thank you on behalf of Gulf Business Network and Training Center for your valuable time and sharing valuable information with us. We really appreciate all your efforts. And thank you all of those who attended this webinar. We're recording this webinar and it will be uploaded on our website. So please stay tuned to webinar.gbntc.com for updates of downloading the soft copy of this presentation in case you have missed it. With that, I'd like to end the webinar and you all will be automatically dismissed. Thank you very much and you all have a good day. Thank you, Ms. Singer.
Thank you, Ms. Nita.
Take care.
Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.